to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Aaron Huber.
Hello.
Hello. And Alex.
Alex,
Mr.
here I am.
Alex Ely.
Eric, happy birthday, by the way.
Happy birthday.
My birthday was like 3 days ago.
Well, when this launches, but you know, it's also your birthday now. So.
As of recording,
so
right
those
now
who
in this
didn't
moment.
know, go find Eric and write happy belated birthday on his Facebook.
Yeah.
And share with him what you love about him.
Yeah, that would be great. I would really appreciate that.
You'll still accept those.
I'll accept
late
those. Yeah,
ones,
belated. Right? I was just looking. Facebook lumps all those birthday notifications together now, so you must get like one. And I didn't even see it. And then I was looking on something else, and I saw people were commenting on there and saying happy birthday. So it was interesting. Like who comes out to greet you on Facebook during your birthday.
The whole avatar thing is kind of weird too. You know, it's like you select it and it's like you're giving someone a cake as your weird looking avatar. Mine's pretty weird looking.
Yeah.
And so you like just click it and it just presents you a cake. So hopefully you got a lot of those.
I got a lot. I'm trying to like parse out who this person is by their meta avatar. It's a little confusing, but I'm doing okay. Thank you for the birthday greetings. Aaron, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And we always appreciate people who are willing to just jump in there. It was a little bit last minute, but we're glad that you're here. Tell us just a little bit about what you do here at Christ Community Church, just for people who may not know.
Yeah. So I joined the City Care counselors about 10 years ago. And then about a year ago, I joined the staff of Christ Community as the assistant renewal director. I think I said that right. I'm basically Wendell's assistant, Wendell Nelson.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
And for those that don't know what renewal is, share more about like what that is.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. It's a bunch of groups and a bunch of people that meet together to process through issues in like recovery and mental health. It's kind of like our own little island of misfit toys. We all kind of do different things and have different curriculums and have different leaders, but we're all kind of united under one umbrella of renewal, like renewing our minds and our spirits and our emotions and our bodies.
I think if people are looking for more information on it, they can always go to the website at cccomaha.org/renewal and everything. All the groups, I think, are available there for them to sign up or learn more about.
I hope they are.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, a lot of great ministry happens there. And just speaking of, for those that are like, we miss Jess. Where's Jess?
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row. Jess's youngest son, had surgery last week, and so she had to miss then. And then this week, he's still in recovery mode, and so prayers for Jess and her son Tyler as he's recovering. I'm sure she'll share more about that when she joins us again. But unfortunately, the doctors are like, no, he doesn't need to go back to school yet, and so she had to say, I can't be on this week. She misses you all, but we are glad to have Aaron jump in very last minute for us. And so give us all extra grace. You give us grace every time you listen to us, but give us extra today.
And hopefully people listening aren't too stressed out by the changes.
Yes.
You know, sorry, that was a bad segue. Today we're going to be talking about stress. What causes it? What's our window of tolerance? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Aaron, you're here to kind of help us dissect that, process it, unpack it. Alex, I know you had a little bit, you had found an article on Psychology Today that kind of helped with some of this. Do you want to break some of that down for us as we get into it?
Yeah. So if you're searching for it, the title is What Happens. I love it when a title's like the entire
article.
What happens when your stress exceeds your window of tolerance? 5 ways to decrease arousal. So that's the title. And one of the things that I found interesting was one of the polls that they recently put together and highlighted in the article. I'm just going to read it. So a recent poll by the Kaiser Family Foundation showed that concerns about mental health still remain elevated 3 years after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, with 90% of U.S. adults believing that the country is facing a mental health crisis. Moreover, half of young adults and 1/3 of all adults reported having felt persistent anxiety in the past year. Another study by Walsh in 2022 found that social media use among college students led to 7% increase in severe depression and 20% in anxiety disorders. A study by Mental Health America found that nearly 5% of adults have reported serious suicidal thoughts, totaling over 12.1 million individuals. And so obviously reeling from the pandemic still in some of these stats. As you are in the counseling world and renewal, and just Eric and I working at a church, are these surprising stats, or how do you feel about it, Erin?
No, it's not surprising at all. I mean, I don't know a counselor that doesn't have a waiting list right now, just because everyone is feeling, well, not everyone, but a lot of people, a lot of us, myself included, are just feeling the stress, I think, of everything in the world right now.
Yeah.
Just the pace that we're living in right now seems really fast, really stressful.
What do you think is so different about now than 10, 20, 30 years ago? Because that's something I think about it a lot, because you hear this over and over again, and I think most people would admit they feel it too. But I don't know that I can quite pinpoint. I mean, a lot of people want to point at social media, and I'm sure there's aspects of that, but and it's maybe more of just a gut instinct thing, but it's like that can't be the only factor in all of this. Like, I'm sure it adds to it. I'm sure there's problems there. Is it something to do with the way our work lives are? We're less, we're more online when we work. We're more in offices,
sitting down,
less trades. People work. I don't know what it is. Is it just a perfect storm of wild scenarios that have aligned to make it this way, or is there something more?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things. Everything you just mentioned. I don't like it when people point at just one thing to say this is the reason, like social media or the internet. Though I think the influx of information we have coming at us every day can be pretty overwhelming to our systems. Just needing to process through all of that. I think whenever, like, at least for myself, when I get information about something, it also sets up, like, in my own brain, these expectations of, like, how I should be in the world or what I should be doing that I'm not doing. Yeah. And so I start feeling overwhelmed by just the amount of things maybe I should be doing that I'm not doing, or the things if that makes sense.
It does.
So I think just the amount of information. I read a stat recently, how much more information we have in one day come into our minds than they did years ago before, I don't know, all of this happened with the internet. But even like the Industrial Revolution and stuff, when people were outside farming all day, they were doing, that we call it mindfulness now. Back then it was just being outside. Yeah. Moving our bodies, getting vitamin D, fresh air.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have as much to compare to.
Yeah.
Like, you could look across the street and go, oh, they got a new Buick. I should get a new Buick,
They were able to be in the moment.
But that was kind of it. It wasn't like I'm looking at every social media influencer or celebrity or politician or whatever. Yeah. Keeping up with the Joneses means something very different now.
Like John Mark Comer, I heard him say recently that if you have a smartphone, you're always in two places at one time. And so I think that's part of it. We're never, not never, but rarely are we just in one place at one time in this moment.
I think some of the fruitfulness of it is there's just more people willing to talk about it. Like, I think there's so many more people that are, phrases like okay with not being okay, acknowledging that. Or I know Dr. Wendell Nelson always uses that term, wounded healers. And there's just more of this willingness to maybe admit that even publicly. Like Irrelevant put out an article, I think last week, and it was just titled 8 Celebrities Who Have Been Refreshingly Honest About Their Mental Health. And it, has people listed like Dak Shepard and Justin Bieber and Billie Eilish and just things like that. So I think there's more, people in that space that are bigger time influencers, and honestly in the church too. I think for a long time in the church, that willingness to confess things to one another. We still have some work to go, but we just put our leaders on so much of a pedestal, and good, bad, or indifferent, the mess and the the dirt behind some of these leaders and their real character. We celebrated charisma over character, I think, for a long time at the church at large. And so now that some of those dominoes have fallen and those people that we maybe idolized over Jesus have been found, not with stellar characters.
Right.
I think we realize, man, we really have to press into this more and stop acting like everything's just okay in our lives.
Right. Like Brené Brown talks about leading with vulnerability, like how it's really important as a leader to be vulnerable. And I think, we're starting to do that more, but for a long time, nobody was.
Yeah.
Well, I think church culture as a whole was always about presenting yourself in a way that the world, like it was almost this backwards idea of like not letting just Jesus change you and people see Jesus through you, but let me present like a false persona or false presentation of who I am, so people believe that have it all put together. And it's kind of, that had to have created a lot of mental tension and stress and things like that. But then as we kind of move away from that, it's almost like there's this other shift where it's like, okay, when are people oversharing? When are people too vulnerable? When are people, and the cost of vulnerability, and what does it mean? Like, when is it beneficial? When is it not? And I think, like, when you're talking to Christians and you're talking about a witness, you want to witness to people. You want people to understand what being a Christian actually is. It's not about, getting clean before you take a shower kind of scenario, but it's it's about healing with a community and finding faith and belief in Christ. But I don't know. It's always, society and culture is always a pendulum. And it feels like right now, maybe it's going really far one way, which is good, and it's exposing a lot. But I think, how do we balance that? How do we manage that? It's really tough.
Yeah.
I think for a church, especially, because there's sometimes that dirty laundry, you wonder, like, how do we aren't equipped to deal with it because we spent so many years repressing anything that was that kind of raw and open in a lot of ways.
Yeah, true. The extremes. I like the pendulum swing example. I think you're right. I think the pendulum has like swung to the opposite side in some ways. And that's not good. Neither extreme is good.
So maybe we're working towards a balance.
Yeah.
We're finding it somewhere. Anyways, getting back kind of the topic at hand, one of the things that came up in this article was a window of tolerance. And this is something to help us understand, pretty much what it says. How much can we tolerate? What is our window for that? But maybe you can help us define that a little clearer. How can we apply that to our own lives and understand that better?
So the pendulum swing is kind of the same thing as the idea of the window of tolerance. So it's sort of like the Goldilocks principle, where one side of the pendulum is like everything's too much, we're feeling anxious, we're hyper aroused by everything and overwhelmed and stressed. And then the pendulum swings to the opposite side of I'm hypo aroused, where I'm feeling shut down, numb. We use the word disassociated a lot. And then in the middle of that is like the just right zone, where we can feel like calm and connected to our body, to others, to God. And we want to try to stay within that for as much time as possible. But it's not ever possible to only be in your comfort zone. And so there's like these sides of the window of tolerance, one side towards like the anxiety and the fight or flight, and the other side towards the shutdown depression, where we want to almost have like one foot in that and one foot in the window of tolerance in order to grow in resilience, to keep being able to expand what we can tolerate, like the amount of hard things in our lives we can tolerate, because we can't ever, like I said, just stay in the middle comfort zone.
Yeah. So help us understand more, because I think those are probably terms that people aren't always using. The hyper aroused and hypo aroused, they sound super similar, but obviously they're completely different ends of a pendulum, as you explained. So just help us, maybe whose brains don't work in this psychological space every day.
Yeah.
Understand, what does that look like? How do I know I'm in one of those states?
Yeah. So like the hyper arousal, I actually have a chart in my office that I hand to my clients a lot where they can like look at like maybe even what's happening in their body and with their breathing, with their digestion, even like if they have a dry mouth or their pupils are dilated or whatever, to see like in your body, are you feeling like you're in more of a state of arousal, which would be like anxiety, like just sort of maybe intense, like overreactions to things, just feeling a lack of emotional safety, like a hypervigilance, like I have to do, I have to keep, it's like almost a speeding up feeling. It can look like, you know, muscle tension, rigidness, addictions, overeating, defensiveness, like your thoughts are just on like a loop, anger, rage, and a lot of other things. But those are some examples of a hyper aroused state. If you are familiar with the movie Inside Out, it's like the character of anger or fear. Those would be examples like a hyper aroused. And then the character of sadness would be more of an example of like a hypo aroused state. And this is when people are more in like the auto, like pilot zone, disassociated, maybe just shutting down, very low levels of energy. Like instead of I'm doing too much, like I can barely get myself moving. Hyper arousal would be like I'm too hot, and hypo arousal would be like I'm too cold. Hyper would be like I need to probably slow things down, and hypo would be I need to speed things up and get moving.
So what I'm hearing is one of the questions that rises to the top of mind is just how do you classify and clarify when this is bad or good? Because I would assume that always being in the middle of both of these, you kind of mentioned earlier, 1 foot in the middle and 1 foot in hyper. But is that just like the best place to be? Is because like I guess I think of on a day, let's say on an average day, I kind of fluctuate through all of these things. You know, maybe there's something kind of stressful at work, and so I kind of go into that hyper mode. But then by the time I get home, I kind of want to shut down and relax a little bit. So I feel like I probably creep into the hypo arousal. You know, and it's like, is that always something I need to identify and be thinking about? Oh, am I too far here? Am I too? You know, is that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's almost an example of having too much information, and then you're just constantly in this state of peril, trying to understand if you're not behaving properly or in the right state of mind. I
think it's totally normal to swing between like a hyper aroused and a hypo aroused, but it's more like, so the pendulum could be swinging to the point where like you're completely out of control or on one side or the other. But if it's a smaller swing of like I'm in activity and I'm feeling sort of overwhelmed, and then my body, I'm like in a sympathetic nervous system state where I'm in a little bit of fight or flight, my body will naturally correct itself by going into like a autonomic nervous system state where it's like, okay, you need to rest. You need to like digest this food or this information. And our body has a natural way of just correcting itself. Yeah. And so it's not bad. Like for instance, for myself, I've noticed that I sort of run along the spectrum of either like really feeling overwhelmed or just like excited. Yeah. Sometimes I'm just excited, but sometimes I get to thinking and moving too fast that it becomes like, too much. And then because that causes a lot of energy to be used, I will swing over into, I just need to binge watch Netflix for the day. Yeah. And so it's like my body's natural way of just correcting that. Yeah.
And I guess sometimes my concern is that when everything is labeled, it becomes prescriptive to certain individuals, and then it's like, well, you're being a little too hypo aroused right now, or you're being, you know what I mean? And it's like that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, or so what's the real benefit of like identifying this in ourselves? Like how does that benefit us, and not just, because it's not really meant to be ammunition to use against someone else, but more of like helping you regulate your own self.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the benefit for me has been just noticing what's happening. I'll just use personal examples, what's happening in my body so that I'm not impacting other people in my life in a negative way.
Okay. Yeah.
So like if I'm just slamming cabinets around my kitchen and like throwing an adult temper tantrum and I don't notice I'm doing that, that can cause damage, to my family who has to like tiptoe around me. But if I can catch it earlier on and kind of notice like, okay, I'm going into this mode that's probably going to like damage my relationships where I want to be in connection with other people, then that could, for me, it's about how other people are perceiving me and how I'm staying in relationship with people in my life. It's not necessarily just an isolated thing.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I think that the thing that this helps us understand as well is, and Inside Out, I think, does a great job of helping explain this, especially in, kids' language, but sometimes we just leave it at, oh, these are feelings or emotions, and we don't always understand how it's actually affecting our body. And like being in one of these states, over in one of these states, one way or another, actually does damaging things to our digestive. I mean, it can really hurt our bodies, and our bodies are not made to be in either of these states all the time. And so it begins to deteriorate, and we're not living, we can't live even physically a healthy life. And so a lot of those physical normalities go out the window, and man, a lot of, that this is in a whole different territory, but a lot of diseases and sickness and things like that can end up being tied to
it's true.
Our mental health and those abilities. One of the things in the article that was just talking about the window of tolerance that I found helpful in explaining it says this. It says, when operating in our window of tolerance, these two branches play a happy game of tag you're it, working together to manage your body's response depending on the situation. So for example, if you're running late for a meeting, the sympathetic nervous system may kick in during these moments. You're rushing, you're worrying about the consequences of being late. Then once you get to a meeting and settle in, the parasympathetic nervous system takes over and starts to re-regulate your body back to being calm and normal. And like I was even feeling this, like as I was leaving another meeting, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be late. I asked Erin to be a part of this podcast, and she told us she had this window, and I'm like texting Eric. I'm like, Eric, can you grab my iPad? Because I'm going to, and I'm in that moment even.
Yep.
And then I'm like, okay, I don't like doing the podcast in that kind of setting is not going to be good. I'll just be all over the place. And so I've even sensed and felt like my body and emotions, even in this, start to slow down. So I just thought that was like a helpful, I read that earlier and I'm like, oh, wait, there I am. And that was a real life example of how, I got there and was feeling that. But it was helpful, that game of tag you're it. And it's how God designed us to feel those things. Fight or flight is a good thing, but not good to always be there, right? And so that's super helpful.
You use a couple terms there, sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Yes.
Do we know what we're talking about when we use those terms?
I don't usually know what I'm talking about. I'm using those terms. No, I had to quickly review what they were before I came in here today. The sympathetic is the activation, I think, of our body, like,
and our nervous system.
Our nervous system, like in a good way for, okay, I need to focus on this presentation so I can be prepared, so I don't make a fool of myself. But then on overdrive could cause sleeplessness, muscle tension, diseases, stress, just hypertension, blood pressure, all the things Alex mentioned and more.
And often that would be fight or flight would kind of be in that.
And then there are other like alert type of trauma responses that can happen. One is called the fawn response that I don't think gets talked about very much. And that is also a trauma response like fight or flight, but it's more like okay, fighting isn't going to work. Fleeing isn't going to happen. So I need to sort of just go internal and make myself small and please the people around me so that I can avoid conflict and pain and just sort of blend into the woodwork. And I think a lot of the reading and research I've done about women, I think men have this too, but Christian women, is we often pick this type of response up in our lives. Just kind of I just need to be pleasing to everyone around me in order to, inside we're kind of dying, but on the outside people think we're just fine.
Is that specifically a stress response, or is that or it can be multiple causes?
Yeah, I think it can be multiple causes.
That could be like maybe an abusive situation.
Yes.
Or, okay.
And I think trauma can shrink our window of tolerance.
Okay. Yeah.
So a definition I really like of trauma, it's just short and sweet, is too much, too little with too little, or too much, too fast with too little support. So if something happens to us that's just too much for us to process, or we don't have anyone to process it with, and it happens too quickly, that can cause a trauma reaction. And if we have those traumas in our life, our window of tolerance can shrink down, and we're able to tolerate even less than someone that didn't have those things. Yeah.
And I think we both kind of described in our own kind of personal ways, like, okay, what does this look like in our life? How do I know I'm entering these states? What are the signs emotionally, physically that I'm kind of going there? But are there other like examples you can think of that that maybe listeners are like, okay, I get it, the emotional side, but what does this look like in my life that I'm going to one or the other, physically or emotionally? How does someone just... Are there other examples?
Well, I
I
guess I just think when you're saying window of tolerance, to be outside of that would suggest to me that that's a problem. Like,
yeah.
So, but I also feel like there are probably individuals who would believe maybe their window of tolerance is different than what other people would allow. Like you might, I might get worked up and, be in a hyper arousal and think this is normal and fine for me. But you might say, "Oh, you're
sharp.
You're being harsh or whatever it is." So
right.
What does that mean? Because I mean,
I could be triggered by your.
It gets into this like two truths type of a thing.
No,
like
that's true.
This is this isn't. Yeah. I don't think I'm out of control.
Yeah.
So, but you do.
But maybe something in my past is sort of like zinged when I hear your voice raise, or even people. Myself included, I've been triggered a lot by people's even nonverbal. Like they looked at me weird, or in my younger days, I'm a sensitive person, and I was very sensitive, and I think 85% of our communication is nonverbal. So people could literally be thrown off and out of their window of tolerance because of your tone of voice.
Yeah.
When you think you're not doing anything wrong, and you might not be doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily your responsibility to fix that if the person is being overly sensitive. We both have to own our kind of sides of the street, I think, so to speak, in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
My resting face
tough,
is
though.
a problem oftentimes with
the
these
RBF.
kinds of things.
No. Not that you have one.
No, I've been.
Yeah, that's what people are talking about.
I've definitely been told and confirmed over and over. And there's like times where I'm like, no, I was just fully engaged and fully present, but that's just my face.
That's just my face. I had a friend in college who had these eyebrows who did something mean. And I had to ask her, are you mad at me, a lot of times? And we had to work through that. And even speaking in public now, like I always try to find like a few anchor faces in the crowd that just look really friendly, because it makes me feel more confident.
Never. If you're ever talking, I'm in the room, I am not your anchor face. And I know a few others I could point you away from too, but I won't right now.
But that's been my responsibility, to notice those things about myself, and to be like, okay, is this actually true that this person hates me or they're mad? And I try to check in with people that I know are safe to ask, so what is your face saying? Am I just imagining this, or is this actually happening, to get reality back online for me?
It's interesting to me because when I was growing up, and just kind of how my family saw me, and extended family and friends, it's like I was kind of like, oh, he's the funny, sarcastic guy, that's just kind of what he does. And so like whenever I try to convey anything serious, it never came across that way.
Right.
They're like, are you being sarcastic? And so it's like I kind of developed maybe a more stern tone when I'm trying to like get a point across that I'm serious about, because it's like I didn't know how else to communicate that.
Yeah.
And then then I realize in that certain circles you start to go, they're like, what, are you angry? Why are you so mad? Even my kids sometimes are like, why are you so mad all the time? I'm like, oh, I'm not mad. I'm just like trying to let you know that I'm being serious right now. This isn't a joke. Right. So it is interesting,
is.
It's so much the body language and tone of voice and perception and past experience and all of that. So I think that's why sometimes when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, this could be so helpful, but also I'm like worried that it's like, it's setting people up to be like, now you're out of your window of tolerance. Why you need to settle down, you know?
See, I don't think it's our responsibility to tell someone else they're out of their window.
That's great.
Tolerance.
I think we need to say that because
I think it's our own responsibility to notice when we are.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's helpful, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're asking too. It's like, how do we, besides someone, suggesting that we are, but how do we identify that ourselves? Like what's the best practices for that?
Yeah.
So are we trying to get bigger windows or smaller windows? What, like at the end of the day, are we trying to expand our window of tolerance?
The bigger the window, the more resilient I think we are as people. I think for me, it's leaning into the things that kind of cause me to be a little bit dysregulated, but I know it's something maybe I'm drawn to or I feel God calling me to, and I do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I do it anyway because I know I'm safe. I can remind myself of that, but I'm like not going to not do hard things.
Yeah.
And I think every time we do something that we say, no, I can't do that, and we do it successfully, we increase our window of tolerance. So I think there's a lot of hope in this too.
Yeah. So what are things that you would say shrink your window of tolerance? I mean, we talked about trauma earlier, stress.
RBFs.
I think we've talked about people with faces like me. I think you talked about addiction, substance abuse.
Yeah.
Are there other lack of sleep?
Yeah, definitely. Anything that's just not good for your mental, physical health. Things that shrink your window of tolerance. Not taking care of your body. Not having relationships that you feel like connected to, or I think being around people, we use the words like toxic people a lot and things like that, but finding people in your life that you feel understood by, I think even if it's one person is a step in the right direction to building a window of tolerance. But if we only find ourselves surrounded by people that bring us down, I think that will shrink our window of tolerance in some ways. I mean, I think the Holy Spirit can increase our window of tolerance.
Yeah.
Things that decrease it would just be anything we do that we kind of know isn't good for us, or we just choose to remain stagnant and to not want to grow or change.
How does like diet affect that, would you say?
I think it can affect it.
Yeah. Not
drinking enough water, not getting outside, not getting exercise, eating crap.
Yeah. It's probably why we feel it even, I think we had 120 hours last 2 weeks ago of no sunlight, and like moments even like that are things that you're like, you start to feel or when you're locked in your house because it's so cold.
The winter.
Yeah.
The winter can decrease people's window of tolerance. I think that's why people go to Phoenix or, go to the sauna sometimes, or you just get those lamps. I think not getting enough daylight can decrease it. That's
good. So we know how to get our window smaller. That's some of the prescription there. Like, how do we start to grow our window of tolerance? You said, doing some of those things that are difficult.
Yeah.
But how do we grow it practically?
I mean, one of the things, like, you'll just read the most out of anything else is remembering to breathe. I think a lot of the times we do kind of hold our breath for some reason. Breathing is the most simple thing, but I think any expert on this the first thing they would say to immediately get your window of tolerance like back online is to just pause whatever you're doing and just take some deep breaths. Because that literally helps like your thinking brain come back online, and then you're not just living out of your like fight or flight. But then I think after that, it's just finding the things that we know work for us. Like I ask myself a lot, okay, when's the last time I felt really good? What was I doing? Like, what did I do? What made me feel that way? And I ask clients that a lot too. Like, let's come up with a list of things that help you. For me, swimming is one of those things. Like going for a swim, like I have to do breathing, just getting in the water, the silence underwater. Water's really healing for me. For other people, it might be other things. And obviously I can't go swimming anytime I want. So I have to have things I can do in the middle of my workday. Some things they will say, or even like splashing water on your neck or your face. If I'm in hypoarousal, sometimes I'll do like 5 push-ups between clients just to like get my blood flowing again. So we just have to come up with those things for ourselves.
So do you think some of this, I mean, it's interesting to me because it's this balance to me of like, some of it just sounds like common sense.
Right.
At the end of the day.
I think so.
It's like breathing. Oh yeah, that thing I've been doing since I was born. Like, but you don't think about maybe how you're not breathing correctly, I guess, you know, because it sounds so simplistic in a lot of ways.
Like the diaphragmic breathing, like the belly breathing.
And from your nose, I mean, even nasal breathing rather than from your mouth. It makes a huge difference in how you can breathe with your diaphragm. So.
Or like, you wonder what, you know, splashing cold water or getting exercise. These things are probably pretty common sense to people, but it's almost like we're in this cultural moment where, do you think it's because we're always searching for that silver bullet, that magic pill, whatever the solution is, that we just overlook the fact that, you know what, this is, the answers have been here forever.
Yeah.
And we used to just be a little more pragmatic about it.
Right.
And now we're like, no, I need this thing. I need this, you know, the next big trend. I need whatever to fulfill me. And, you know, but really it's like, no, be quiet.
Just be quiet for 5 minutes and
like,
stare out the window or stare at a white wall.
Like the thing I did in the back seat of my parents' car my whole childhood.
Yeah.
You know? It's
or like in the grocery store line when we used to just like stand there spacing out.
Reading the tabloid headlines.
No, I think we make it more complex.
Yeah. Okay.
I really do. I know I have. I like 5 years ago, I discovered most of the things I have to do for myself have nothing to do with like changing my thinking.
Yeah.
It's like literally putting my body in a different position than it's in, or getting outside, or taking my shoes off and walking in the grass. Just really simple things.
Well, and I think with younger, even maybe younger generations with the prevalence of social media, there's this maybe not as much desire as it feels like it's necessary to have a certain reputation or a certain status or clout on social media or presence there. It's kind of this, you know, you have your physical, spiritual. Now we have this like digital being that we're having to curate all the time. And so I wonder if, you know, they see someone else, or you even, I mean, we're all probably victims of this, where you see someone else that appears to have it together. And it's like, well, it couldn't be as simple as these things that I would just normally think to do. There has to be something else that's getting people to this point. They have to know a secret. They have like, it's like, it's not just calorie counting that you could lose weight. Like that can't be it. You know, like, you know, it's just, there's things like that where I think we just make it so complicated because we don't have what we think we need or what we think we should have, maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and I think in the church world, we call these disciplines, you know, and whether spiritual disciplines or physical discipline, like it. And I mean, discipline is not a word we are naturally gravitate toward, but they're so critical in shaping us spiritually, shaping us physically. And so a lot of these things are not like, they're not natural responses. When you're in one of these, you know, whether you're hypo or hyper, when you're in that space, like to be disciplined enough to, one, realize it, and then two, walk away from that when that's not what your body's telling you, when you're angry or when you're sad, when you have all these feelings rushing in, that's difficult, you know? And I think that's where like liturgies and a lot of these things, not even just church liturgies, but creating these habits and rhythms in our lives, you know, help ground us. They're grounding exercises in big ways that a lot of times they take work. They take you maybe looking silly because, you know, I'm getting to this point of tension and I need to just start breathing. And if you're like in a meeting, you're like, how, you know, then you start thinking, oh, what's everyone going to think about me? Like all these kinds of things flash in your head. And so to be disciplined, that's why it's called discipline. It's not easy.
Right.
And it's doing these difficult things and hopefully letting those things stack up in a lot of ways. But you have
like
to build
a breath
the muscle.
Prayer.
Yeah.
Like a breathing and help me Jesus. That's like my most common prayer. Just like help me Jesus as I breathe.
One of the things that comes to mind too is self-talk, and how does that kind of play into it? I mean, for me, I just go on two extremes all the time. I'm I will look at myself in the mirror and be like, you are a stupid idiot. What is wrong with you? Why are you so dumb? Like, I'll go from that extreme to I'll accomplish something that I'm like, of course I did that. Like, why do these people not see my value? Like, what's wrong with them? Why are they not see how valuable? And it's like this extreme back and forth. And I think, I mean, that's probably not good, but it's just one of those things where I think people probably have varying degrees of that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because a lot of times when we talk about self-talk, it's always negative. Like, oh yeah, you don't want to do negative self-talk. But I think, I don't think I'm that unusual. I think people probably do have pretty big swings when it comes to that stuff. And, like, how do you identify that? Is that something that can be trained? Because sometimes I feel like it's just almost like a reflex to me. Like it's not something I'm consciously training or developing.
Yeah, I have the same extreme thinking too. And I I do a type of therapy called internal family systems. I won't get into it a lot, but it's sort of like Inside Out, where it's like I often have internal voices in my head that are just saying different things. And there are times when I'll just sit down with a piece of paper and I'll just write, like, for me, getting it out of my head and like writing it down is really helpful. And just seeing, okay, what are the different things saying and why are they saying that? Noticing what's going on in here.
Yeah.
Getting to know it. Like, why is it saying that? Where did that come from? Did that come from something just today? Or if I had that thought, is that like a pattern in my life? And then going from there, like, okay, that part of me that's telling me I'm stupid or whatever, like, does that sound like my voice? Does that sound like one of my parents' voices or a teacher I had or the enemy or whatever?
Yeah.
And then getting to know, like, what does that part of me need? And if that part of me feels too weird to say, like, well, what does that voice in my head like need from me right now or need from God?
Yeah.
Like, what would God say to that voice in my head right now? And then that becomes my discipline, my spiritual discipline. Like, the truth God says about me, I repeat to myself and I'll probably write it down too, because that's just helpful for me. But noticing patterns and then noticing like what helps me get out of those patterns, I think can be good in those situations.
There's probably two different people listening to this. That's it. But one of them is like, okay, you've opened me up to a whole new world. I need to become more aware of this in myself. You said, hey, it's your responsibility to kind of figure out your window of tolerance. So there's that person. How can we help, them take a best next step, whether it's counseling or figuring out some of these things. And then there's probably the person that really means it when they say, I know somebody in my life that is always living in one or two of these places out of balance, but it's not my responsibility to go tell them, as you said earlier, how do I help that person that I'm like, it's so obvious, and I want something for you. I want you to be healthy. So how would you help both of those two people take the best next step? So we'll start with the first person.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm noticing this in my life. I want to take some steps to help solve it and expand my window of tolerance.
Best next step. I would say, finding a counselor is good. Even as a counselor, I don't think every single person needs to find a counselor. I think we can find people that are safe or easy to talk to, but I also think there are a few books that rise to the top of my head. They're by an author named Andi Kolber, Kolber, and she wrote a book called Try Softer and another one called Strong Like Water. And she's a Christian counselor, and her books are just really excellent at breaking all of this down. And she includes scripture as well, just to like explain these concepts. And she has like questions that you can ask yourself. Just if you don't necessarily want to talk to somebody, but you want to just see like how to do this work. And for the second person, maybe just buying them that book and leaving it on their kitchen table.
Real passive
with a Post-it
aggressive
that says, read this.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
For Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Decide how important, I don't know. Yeah, there might be a little gentle, empathetic confrontation that could happen, especially if if you're close to that person and their behavior impacts you. Just start with an I feel statement. Yeah. I feel anxious around you. have you ever had anyone else tell you that? Or I don't know. That could be one way. Depends on the relationship for sure.
Is there something helpful about let's do this together?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe acknowledging, hey, I've been noticing this in myself. Like, do you ever feel that about yourself? And maybe if it's counseling or whatever, depending obviously on the relationship, like, man, we probably both should go explore this and it'll help us both thrive, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that.
Yeah, inviting them.
Yeah.
And if they want to do it, yes, for sure.
That's good.
All right. Well, thanks, Erin, for all of this. Do you have any final thoughts you'd want to leave people with? Or I think we covered a lot, but I always want to leave a window of opportunity.
Window of opportunity.
For you, if you have anything you want to add.
Well, my mind is blank right now,
Great.
So I'm sure
that's good. We emptied it.
Yes, I poured it out today.
So, well, thanks for jumping in kind of last minute and helping us understand this better, and hopefully helping us understand ourselves better, and just another pathway. You know, I think when you connect to yourself and you invite God into that, and you invite Christ into this healing process, it's something really powerful that can happen. And so tools like this can be extremely valuable. So thanks for everybody who's listening out there. If you have any questions or concerns, as always, you can reach out to us on email. You can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org. You can reach out to us on social media on Instagram or TikTok at CCCOMA Podcast. Or if you'd like to call and leave us a voicemail, the old-fashioned way of communicating with us, pick up that phone and dial 402-885-9930. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.